As I mentioned, Ian Mitchell will be presenting on behalf of IBM today. Ian is the IBM Distinguished Engineer with responsibility for the technical architecture of the CICS product portfolio. He has 25 years experience as a technical leader in IBM Hursley and has been in the forefront of creating and introducing many of CICS important innovations, including workload management, Sysplex support, business transaction services, Java, web services, event processing, and the CICS Explorer. In this role, Ian has worked with many of the technical leaders across all the mainframe technology components. Ian also has close relationships with many of IBM's largest customers running critical systems using CICS and the mainframe. Ian, take us away.
Thank you, Farrell. Yeah, well, I'll also say thank you to Hostbridge for giving me the opportunity. As Farrell mentioned, Andy had a last-minute conflict, but I'm delighted to be able to be the warm-up act for Russ's main tent session today. So really, just in introduction, it's to remind everybody what the main value proposition and the main objectives that we had when planning, implementing and releasing the latest version of CICS, that's 5.1. So if we look down the charts at chart 3, then it's just a reminder that we took a great deal of care to understand customer requirements this time round and to really listen to customers and what the top priorities were. So everybody's top priority, undoubtedly, the ongoing operational pressures to do, as they say, more with less, and so to improve efficiency and drive down the costs. So I'll introduce a few of the highlights about how we've improved your operational efficiency to control the cost. But also what we've been seeing over the past number of years, and we've been building capability for, is also for you to execute faster. So we see that there's a lot of pressure in terms of keeping up with the business needs. So as we look at the success of web services over a number of years, as we've introduced the event technology in version 4 to improve the way you can get the value out of your existing applications, and then the features that we've introduced in version 5 are very much focused on enabling the applications and the systems to keep pace with the ever-increasing demands of the business. So that's all about how we enable you to provide more agile solutions. At most points when I'm talking about this to folks, I'll emphasize that as a CICS organization, ourselves in Hursley, we are fully 100% agile in terms of our process, so all the way from analyzing requirements, running the beta program, which again is something that we'd encourage anybody who's interested in the future of CICS to look at, through implementation and testing and service. We're 100% on the rational tools which really support our agile business process. But this is all within a backdrop of really understanding that getting the outcomes that are associated with cloud computing really embody many of those objectives. So the way in which we can improve efficiency and give greater agility really sum up to many of the outcomes of cloud enablement. And I'm working across the CICS portfolio and indeed across the mainframe portfolio to make sure that we bring forward a really first-class cloud proposition. But more specifically, and on the next chart, chart 4, in 5.1, we've focused on greater capacity, so we've continued our roadmap around 64-bit and around thread-safe exploitation of the latest hardware. There's a number of features in there that really improve your ability to consolidate workload onto CICS and to do things with more efficiency. But as well as the execution time and the raw efficiency of the runtime, we focused on how you can actually manage your system in a more effective way. So another big item that we've introduced in 5.1 is the idea of policies to help with managed operations. We've put a number of features in around increased availability. So again, from requirements from customers, we put in features to, for example, ensure that IPIC connections have got keeper lives on them, so we can really keep the system available and doing the business for the longest time possible. A lot of what we also needed to do was around deeper insights. That was to give you more information as you maybe embark on a consolidation exercise to really understand how the system's running and where your particular bottlenecks are and how version 5 will relieve many of those bottlenecks. So new news since the first announcement of 5.1 back in October time and when it GA'd in December are firstly a feature pack that we'll be releasing shortly around modern batch. So this is an enhancement to look at how you can start consolidating some of your batch workloads to share the runtime environment of CICS. So that's new news since a couple of weeks ago. On the service agility side, we've done the beginning of a very comprehensive roadmap to introduce new control mechanisms and new deployment mechanisms so that you can really make your DevOps, as it's called, the interface between development and operations, that much more agile. So now we have first-class applications and first-class platforms as system management objects to really make it easy for you to standardize your platforms and to deploy applications onto those platforms. Another exciting, what I think is really exciting aspect of 5.1 is the inclusion of the technology from the WebSphere Liberty profile. So that enables you to host servlets and JSP applications that are exposing your core CICS services. You can host that web-style layer of technology right on CICS, right in the heart of the CICS runtime. So it's running in CICS regions, on CICS threads, and I think that's a lot of what Russ will be talking about. But another piece of new news is that we're going to build on our exploitation of Liberty and start with mobile extensions. So as mobile becomes a direct access device to your applications, we're going to simplify the integration with mobile devices, and we're starting with native JSON support using some of that Liberty technology. So these features are the really important ones, and some of those what Russ is going to go on to talk about. So I'll, in the interest of letting Russ come on and tell you about his tales from the trenches, I'd really just go to maybe chart 8, which is another exciting development that we've just announced, and that is the CICS TS Value Unit Edition. So this is a one-time charge way of getting all the benefits of version 5.1 for new workloads. That's for Java, Liberty, JVM server style workloads on 5.1 in this Value Unit Edition style. So Value Unit Edition runs in a ZNalc partition, and I'm sure most of you may be familiar with what ZNalc, that's New Application License Charge. That's a reduced price ZOS container. You can run that alongside your existing CICS estate, and we allow you to DPL from new workload in Value Unit Edition across to all your core services running on version 4 maybe. And the great thing about Value Unit Edition is that it doesn't demand that upgrade to the core systems because it doesn't start the single value charging clock ticking. So that's a really good option to maybe explore some of the things that Russ is going to talk about in the next 45 minutes or so. So with that, I'll hand back to Ferrell and leave it there, and we'll have questions and answers at the end.
Thank you, Ian. And as a reminder, if you have questions regarding Ian's portion, you can also use the question and answer chat window in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. Next up, we'll have Russ Tubner. Russ is the CEO of HostBridge Technology. Russ is a seasoned inventor and entrepreneur in the software industry. He has over 30 years of experience. He has applied his creative energies to solving difficult problems associated with integrating large-scale IBM systems and various emerging technologies. HostBridge flagship product is used by large organizations to bridge the gap between web-based applications and high-value System Z applications. Russ has been a contributing author to various technical bulletins and is the co-author of U.S. Patent Number 6981257 pertaining to XML enablement of CICS applications. Russ?
Great. Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending upon where you are. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to Ian for being with us this morning. Andy and Ian, I've seen their calendars. It's really, really hectic, and so I really appreciate Ian taking the time to be with us today. I know that it's a real treat to have someone like Ian on the call, so I do encourage you to take full advantage of it with your questions for Ian. Better him than me. I'm saying that with a wink. I'll be glad to answer any questions as well. So this part of the presentation is what I commonly call a Tales from the Trenches update. Many of you who are customers have seen little newsletters that come out from us with a similar kind of a theme. But it's our way of being able to tell you, here's what we're seeing, here's what we think about what's going on. And so we're going to highlight TS 5.1 today, and also then spend a little bit of time highlighting not only the things we've done internally in the lab, but also things that are happening in customer organizations. Many of you know of HostBridge. Some of you I can see from the attendee list perhaps don't, but I'll just give you the brief update, and that is that we were founded in 2000 to invent really a new breed of integration software by exploiting CICS Transaction Server. In 2000 was roughly the time frame when Transaction Server 1.3 rolled out, and it was clear that 1.3 and all subsequent releases would have a whole raft of features that would allow us to conceive of and invent new solutions for integration. And in fact, those solutions could help customers save time, cut costs, and generate revenue. So we're really thankful to our customers. We're also thankful to IBM for the opportunity to have a strong technology partnership, certainly with FirstLeap, but also with some of the other product groups, specifically the language environment and the ZOS product groups. I guess the way to correctly summarize who we are these days is we're, for many of you, we are like civil engineers for System Z and CICS, except we use software to try to create very high performance bridges. And with that sort of a lens, I would just say that we've honed a set of principles that we have started to believe in very strongly, and these principles guide not only what we build, but really how we evaluate the things that IBM comes out with, whether it's inside of CICS or just in System Z from a hardware standpoint, or ZOS as the operating system. I will review these very quickly. I'm not going to camp on any of these, but just to let you know, this is the lens through which I read the announcements of CICS TS 5.1 and why I'm pretty excited. First of all, and you, our customers, tell us this loud and clear, and that is that integration is always a means to an end. It's never an end in and of itself, and that integration has to create immediate value and facilitate a future strategic objective. Secondly, and this is probably the most challenging thing we do throughout our customer base, is we have to keep the integration layer agnostic to, yet try to exploit the existing infrastructure. Many of you, well, there are huge diversity in the System Z world and the CICS world in our customer base about how you form the boundary between CICS and System Z to the outside world. We have to be sensitive to that. We also try to make sure that the integration layer is always designed for performance, fidelity, and leverage. Then finally, we have to make sure that we support all types of your existing apps. Probably the thing that we're best known for is all the work that we did down here in the area of visual transactions. Many of you have leveraged that support for years, but we also try to embrace pure business logic as well as various data repositories. So that is the lens. I suppose there's one other aspect of it I neglected to mention here on Principle 5, and that is we really want to exploit all the modern System Z architecture elements, and particularly that means specialty engines. We've put a very fine point on that over the last few releases of our product. We are a believer that high-value apps can consume high-cost MIPS, but new or integration workloads should exploit lower-cost MIPS, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to make that happen. That's become something of a principle for us. So our perspective is that regardless of your objective, how you approach integration really matters. Now, this diagram that many of you have seen, maybe some have not, kind of summarizes at the top level what's going on inside of HostBridge. And that is, it is an integration engine that runs inside of CICS for the purpose of exposing your high-value applications as services to the outside world. So with that, now we come to TS 5.1, and Ian has already covered this. And the highlights for 5.1 consumed a couple of sessions at Impact a couple of weeks ago, and they were really rich with content. We're going to focus on, well, this slide illustrates a few of the points about operational efficiency and service agility, but what I want to move to very quickly is what we focused on. Because whenever IBM comes out with a new version of CICS, we, like other ISVs or US customers, we read those announcements very carefully, and we try to focus on what are the bits and pieces that really will add value to our particular customers or foster what we seek to achieve with our product. And you can see here the two that I've highlighted for 5.1. And first, it's OTE enhancements and 64-bit storage. We are a big user of the CICS OTE capability, the Open Transaction Environment. In fact, I think it's clear to say or fair to say that a vast majority of the functionality we've been able to deliver, and especially our zip enablement layer, would simply not have been possible without OTE. So IBM's move to make more and more CICS commands thread safe is a very good thing, not just for us, but it creates a bigger sandbox for you as well and allows us to achieve greater workloads in single regions. That also is true for the 64-bit storage initiative that IBM has put on. While we as an ISV, as well as some others, the move to 64-bit drove us mildly crazy for a moment of time. It's nothing but goodness. It's goodness for IBM, it's goodness for us as an ISV, as well as for customers. Because combined, all these factors mean that you can increase single region load or parallelism further, and that improves operational efficiency for the entire System Z complex. The other thing that caught our eye was Java and the WAS Liberty Profile. Now, I will admit to somewhat in the prior releases of CICS much a deaf ear to Java. Part of that had to do with our experience in the laboratory with it and much of our experience with customers. But I guess I'm here to report that from my perspective, I'm becoming something of a convert, and that is that there are significant Java improvements now in the foundation of Transaction Server 5.1. And in fact, so much so, we as a vendor, HostBridge, we are now going to consider using Java as a component in building CICS integration solutions that scale. So we're going to try to leverage this capability, and I'll show you on a chart why we think that's important. Now, the WAS Liberty Profile also adds a lot of functionality, and I think whatever my own commentary, but I think whatever you see as the functionality of the WAS Liberty Profile today in 5.1, I view it as something of a placeholder, because I think you're going to see a lot more. We will all see more. Today, some of the more apparent things are support for JSPs and servlets that go along with this initiative of being able to support modern interfaces. But we think that's just the tip of the iceberg, and we're going to be working to exploit that further. Let me explain one way that we've already begun to exploit this. This is a very typical diagram that shows how you would configure access to HostBridge and CICS-based services to the outside world. See the little guy to the left who has all his devices. Maybe he's talking directly to CICS, maybe he's going through a server of some kind or other infrastructure, but nonetheless, a lightweight HTTP, probably a RESTful request flows into CICS through the CICS web support. Then it goes to the HostBridge service engine where we orchestrate at kind of the microsecond speed level all the activities that happen within CICS. Then we return a lightweight response. Usually it's XML or JSON. This is extremely typical. Many of you are running this in production today, and we thank you for that. But what TS 5.1 creates for us is the opportunity to consider alternate configuration. And it's not to say that we're not going to support this. In fact, we know that this configuration you see on the screen right now will probably be the workhorse configuration for most of our customers for the foreseeable future. But let me just add a few other elements to the diagram that show you what we can now conceive of. And when I say we can conceive of, it's not that this wasn't technically possible before, it's that now it really will scale at the level that you, our customers, care about. So here we see, I'll highlight some new elements. We have the JVM server component. We also have the Java web container. These are components out of the Liberty profile. And then what we're showing is that here is a device, or here is a page or a server request that's coming in via an HTTP request. We're bringing back a static web page. Then we might post in another document to a JSP. That JSP could then dialogue with a service component running within CICS, orchestrating various transactions, and then return a response via XML or JSON. JSON is, of course, kind of our native tongue, since our engine on CICS is a native JavaScript engine. So this is just one of the things that you can begin to conceive of doing. I want to use this diagram to highlight a couple of other things that we think are goodness. Of course, one of the things that you'll begin to notice as IBM is making more and more presentations about deploying System Z into a mobile world is there's a heavy reliance upon the use of JavaScript on the client side. One of the unique things about HostBridge is that that same language is used as our orchestration technique on the server side. So it is JavaScript on both sides. And in fact, in some of our customers, the exact same people who are writing these services on the left or on the client side, they are also the same ones who are writing server-side services using our implementation of JavaScript because they can, because it's the exact same dialect and language. So that's another benefit of this approach. Another benefit, we think, is that it maximizes horizontal scalability. A while back, IBM came out with a communication to its customers, putting a real interesting point on the fact that until the laws of physics change or certain fundamental breakthroughs in computing are achieved, we need to understand how we can maximize horizontal scalability. We need to conceive of solutions that can use multiple engines in parallel. And so this diagram, where I've placed the pins now, highlights the fact that in this configuration, we are using all the specialty engines that IBM has to offer under ZOS. For example, because of the reliance of Java and the JVM server, we're able to use MIPS on the ZAP. Because HostBridge, we made the investment to zip enable our product. Our integration engine is running on the zip. And then, of course, your high-value transactions are running over here on the GP, as always. But that's okay, because our objective is to make sure that the integration layer runs on specialty engines. And that frees up the economic value of your high-value GPs for those apps. So this is something that we actually have demonstrated this. We demonstrated this publicly at our presentation at Impact a couple of weeks ago. And we think there's great promise here. Let me focus on, shift gears here and focus on two customer case studies that came about over the last really 18 months, one just in the last 6 months. And these two customer case studies, the theme here is, if I were to give a subtitle, it would be this: the amazing things that you can do in the open transaction environment. And so as I talk about this particular solution that has now grown very rapidly into a new HostBridge offering, none of this would be possible without Ian and the CICS team's focus on CICS OTE. Also, I think these sorts of highly scalable solutions not only put OTE in a good light, but a lot of the other things that they've done inside of CICS for purposes of efficiency. Anyway, there are two customers highlighted in this case study. One is customer A. I cannot use their name, but they are in the telecommunications industry here in the U.S. They run an extremely high daily and consistent transaction volume. They have a long-standing investment in COBOL-based socket applications. And that's really what piqued our curiosity. It's this idea that we're starting to see a lot of customers raise their hands and say, can you help me with these socket applications? Customer B is in the financial services industry. They're outside the U.S. They have a very different transaction shape to their load. They're extremely high transaction volume on one day every month and in a very compressed time period. And then lastly, regarding customer B, they had a long-standing investment in PL1-based socket applications. But they both had common business objectives, and I think this is what Ian was commenting on early in his slide set, and that is that if there's one thing that we hear as a software vendor, and I'm sure that IBM hears it daily, it's that there's a huge need to be able to deliver operational efficiency and lower cost. These two customers put it almost the exact same way. They were trying to respond to competitive pressures, but they also wanted to lower the incremental cost of high volume processing. And one of them put it very specifically, where they wanted to make sure that the marginal value of that next 100,000 transactions was greater than the marginal cost. And sometimes in highly scaled systems, we get into a situation where the marginal value or the marginal cost goes up greater than the marginal value. So their objective was to certainly move new workload to System Z and reinforce CICS, but they wanted to do it in the smartest way possible. So they really came to us with a set of objectives that were all about reducing the GP CPU burn associated with integration and plumbing, for lack of a better word. They wanted the integration to be less expensive so they could use and deploy their GP NIPs and their applications more effectively. And to us, looking at this with fresh eyes, this was a requirement or an opportunity that was tailor-made to exploit CICS and the open transaction environment. The timing was also opportune. I won't go into it, but I'll just highlight the bottom factor, and that is that we are committed to delivering this sort of innovative functionality under CICS, and we really are zealots regarding the integration of CICS apps and data. So that's again part of the lens through which we look at all these problems with, and we're CICS guys. So this customer, this is their beginning point, and this is a block diagram that probably many of you we could draw, and it would be representative of your organization as well. At Impact, after I gave a presentation there, a few customers came up and they said, you know, that's my diagram too. And we see this a lot, where large organizations, in order to support an extremely high transaction volume, they built over time their own infrastructure using receive transactions, socket transactions of various types, senders, listeners, leverage on the CICS socket support and the EZA socket API. Of course, the real value, all of this here, what I'm circling right here, got my, my pointer on there. All of that is really just because we want to be able to get control over here to our high-value application. So, but the customers, these customers begin to have a theory, and that is that there is something going on here that we want to be able to understand better. We think there's some opportunity for savings. So, and in fact, their supposition was that there was a lot of red tape right there in the middle. Turned out they were true, and I'll show you how and why, what we did about it. We examined it, as you might imagine, and put that particular area of infrastructure under a microscope and measured it both at our site and at customers. And we did a whole lot of tests to actually generate load and assess all that. And this is where the data led us. And that is that if you're a high volume CICS customer and you're using CICS socket support, the CPU burn is measurable and linear. I won't say it's high or low, because I think the only thing that matters to most of our customers is whether it can be lower and whether they can free up GP MIPS for the purpose of high-value applications as opposed to plumbing. So we began to isolate all the various factors, and it turned out that the low-hanging fruit was a component called the CICS socket support. Now, CICS socket support is, we all know it, it's a workhorse. It's been around a long time. In fact, it predates CICS open transaction environment. There was some re-engineering around OTE a while back. However, much has changed in ZOS and CICS transaction server. And this seemed like a tailor-made opportunity to step back and say, now that CICS has evolved the way it has, now that we have access to the OTE environment, we have access, or if you're an authorized ISV, you have access to specialty engines. The design patterns of socket applications are so well defined and ingrained. Couldn't we take a fresh look at this? And so, in fact, we did come up with a solution for this customer where we essentially re-engineered all that interface. And in the process of doing it, we're able to eliminate all that red tape that was going on between the high-value application on the right and the outside world. So we were able to just simply eliminate it with a replacement socket support infrastructure. Just to give you an idea of the assessment of the solution, I won't go into too many details here. If you have any questions, by all means, give us a call. We love to talk about it. But the GP CPU burn associated with socket I/O went way down, north of 40%. Now, again, that's just the CPU burn associated with socket I/O, not the applications itself, but just the infrastructure and the plumbing. All of this was transparent to the customer applications, and we were able to effectively zip enable this with minimal task switching, which is always our objective. Customer B, I won't spend as much time on, a very similar case study. You'll notice that they had the obligatory set of listeners, handler transactions, worker transactions. But the thing to note is that all the real high-value work occurs to the right of this whole slide. All of this is just plumbing. All of this is just getting the requests in and out. It relied upon the CICS socket support as well. You can see the other layerings. But when we looked at this, our first solution was, we've seen this time and time again. Why don't we just write an EVA socket API ourselves that really does exploit OTE, can exploit zip, can talk directly to the USS socket layer. And so we did that. And we had a really nice GP CPU reduction, but we didn't really like the zip enablement potential. So we kept working with this customer, and we realized that there was definitely an opportunity to do that by simply using our product as the worker transaction. So again, I'll kind of skip some of the details, but just say that this customer now has a solution which allows them to use a zip-enabled socket listener coming in to be able to take a special, let's call it a specialty engine socket listener, coming to be able to receive the request. It then passes off to a customer written handler that leverages our EZA socket API. And then about 80% of their transactions are processed by a host bridge provided worker transaction because they were very generic. No special processing was required at this level. But then, of course, they link over to their existing application. So we're able to zip enable all of the listener activity, the worker transaction activity, before we pass control over to the high-value application. That gives you an idea of some of the things that we can do with CICS OTE that just simply weren't possible before. I'll just put this up for a second. This customer had a very particular value proposition model, or what mattered most to them was freeing up GP CPU minutes during their peak 4-hour period. So you can see the analysis that they went through to be able to reclaim essentially 28 minutes of GP CPU time, and now they can use those 28 minutes to actually run more customer workload using their apps. So just a scenario that we wanted to highlight about what CICS continues to do for their customers. So I'll just wrap up before we go to Q&A. We really do think that 5.1 breaks new ground in many areas. We were part of the early support program, and so as a result, we've already put forward our corresponding release, which is Hostbridge 662. And I would just highlight a couple of things in closing. From the perspective of an integration-minded ISV, we're excited about many things in 5.1. I've highlighted two. One is OTE and 64-bit, but also the Liberty profile, the Java performance enhancements. I would just say, as far as we're concerned, Hostbridge, watch that space, because this is an area that we think it's now time to leverage and use. I've talked to enough customers over the years to form a fairly strong impression that poor integration solutions have often given System Z apps and CICS transactions, or CICS in general, just an unnecessary bad rap. Some of that is just due to the cost that these integration solutions, the cost characteristics of those integration solutions. It had nothing to do with the application itself. And so the message today in the modern world of System Z and CICS is that there is no reason, or at least no good reason, to devote high-value MIPS to integration of plumbing, and that you customers could take a fresh look at modern CICS and System Z capabilities, and we hope you'll also look at those capabilities from innovative ISVs like Hostbridge. We think if you look at those modern capabilities, you will be well rewarded. So, Carol, with that, I will stop, and I'm sure that people have a lot of questions for Ian.
Thank you, Russ. Before we unmute the phones for questions, we did get a number of questions that came in via the chat window. First, I want to let everybody know that we will be sending out a slide deck from both presentations after our webcast today. And you can also get the URL and password to view the recorded webcast by request. So you can just reply back to Susan from her email. Okay, we have several questions that came in via chat. First of all, some were centered around zip, and then we'll go back to some other topics. The first one has to do with, Ian, the CICS TS 5.1 natively leverage zip engines?
So thanks for the question. I would say, well, what does natively mean these days? So no CICS in terms of our system code and your COBOL applications won't take advantage, won't execute on zip or zap. But of course, from the first time that Java specialty engine capability was available on ZOS, that is where all of CICS Java has executed. It's not it is not the case that the CICS chooses that. If you have a zip, and basically I think we're only effectively selling zips, and we do zap on zip type capability in the with ZOS. CICS Java will utilize the available zip capacity for the Java execution by virtue of what ZOS does. So in many ways, exploitation of Java in CICS is the quickest way to get that sort of capability. It is also the quickest way to get benefit from the latest hardware instructions. So a lot of work was done in both Java 6 and Java 7 to make Java on ZOS, and so Java in CICS really fly. So when you look at exploitation of things like transactional execution, large pages, all of those pieces of technology that were put into the latest hardware is most easily exploited through Java in CICS. And we are also using more of the JVM server, as Russ has indicated, for system functions. We do web services enablement with Access 2 through it. And so it really is a blurring of that line between what you might traditionally think of as native and what we regard as natural and native in CICS 5 version 5.
Yeah, Farrell, could I take?
Absolutely.
I'd just like to add a comment to that and say that, you know, I think IBM has done all the right things along the way with respect to specialty engines, and not only at the System Z level, but they recognized the fact that there were a lot of customers who had zips. They wanted to be able to run Java workload on them as well. They came out with a zap on zip capability and feature that was exactly right for some of our customers. It's what they needed. IBM has done wonderful work, and we're very thankful for their support of us as an ISV so that we can support zip. There are things that you can do inside of the CICS environment when it comes to using XML services, things like that can run on specialty engines. So and then as we move forward, or at least as an observer of Ian's organization, as they move forward evolving CICS, I think we're likely to see more and more of what we consider to be CICS services running on a specialty engine, but it's because some of those services are might be coming from the Liberty profile. I just surmise as an observer that that's probably likely. So I think we collectively, from CICS, the ISV world, and the customer world, I think we're evolving in the future to where your existing COBOL applications, your high-value applications will continue to run on the GPs, but a lot of the infrastructure of CICS or the value-added services related to Java or the integration infrastructure of HostBridge, we will all be running on the specialty engine. So, and that fits nicely in this architecture where we need to put horizontal scalability as one of the key value propositions of System Z. It always has been, and now we really need to make it put it to good use.
Russ, the next question I'll direct to you is what do I have to do to leverage the zip engine with respect to HostBridge, and what version should we upgrade to? Now, I know that we introduced support for zip with HostBridge version 6.5, but you might speak to how we've continued to enhance and really would suggest them going to the current version 6.62, which was just released within the past few weeks.
Yeah, I would recommend 6.62 because what it does is it has numerous functionality enhancements, not only in the core product, but it also is a roll-up of a lot of the things that we've done for our zip customers and our socket support customers. But even above and beyond all that, it's also the foundation, has our TS 5.1 foundational support. So if you're not a Hostbridge customer, you would start at 662. If you're already a Hostbridge customer running some version of Hostbridge, maybe a 5 or in the 6 range, we would encourage you to get current. Now, in terms of what you really need to exploit zip, you need to be running what we refer to as our HBJS scripting engine. If you look back over the last 12 years, there have been 2 major revisions or releases of our script engine. The first one was called HBX, it was our nomenclature. We chose not to zip enable that engine. We came out with a new engine that had far more functionality, far easier for us to maintain, and also far easier for us to zip enable. So you need to have the HBJS. Your scripts need to use HBJS. So that particular script engine. So Farrell, I think those are the things. I mean, they have to be able to have run the HBJS script engine, not the older version of the script engine, and then they need to be able to have a version of Hostbridge, as you mentioned, that at least has the entry-level zip offering. If you're interested in the socket support, the zip-enabled socket application, that support we began to roll out in 6.5, 6.5.1, 6.5.2, now in 6.6.2, there's been a maintenance roll-up so that if you were wanting to dabble around with that technology, you should start right on 6.6.2.
Okay, the next one is, I think, directed to both Ian and Russ, and you might be able to point who they should follow up with. Are there additional license costs for zip enablement?
Well, let me take that one simply because only our code runs on the zip, and so actually, Farrell, I should probably let you handle that as the business development guy. But normally, I guess the answer is it all depends. The typical answer is yes. There is a additional charge that we have for the zip enablement support. It's a separate module that comes with Hostbridge, so there's a modest upfront cost and an additional maintenance cost along with it. We're very mindful, though, in setting those prices to make sure that our customers have almost an immediate positive return on investment. Farrell, would you like to address anything more about cost or pricing?
Yeah, just that if they have some specific questions, just contact me, and we can talk about their computing environment. I can provide that information. And Ian, you may just want to speak just the overall zip pricing model, or who they might contact for if they wanted to add a zip.
Well, from CICS's point of view, it's pretty transparent to it's a piece of the hardware. It's a configuration of the LPAR. CICS doesn't directly have any configuration that makes the Java, our JVM server, zip eligible. So it just comes naturally when you configure zips into the environment that CICS is running in.
Okay, the next question, what is the latest version of Hostbridge? And I can answer that, which is 6.6.2. And what are aspects for the new ZOS 2.1 coming out this fall?
Ian, you want to talk about anything about ZOS 2.1?
I haven't really got anything to say in this context with regard to 2.1, no.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't either, other than to say that we're tracking it very carefully. We are part of the ZOS Independent Software Developer group. We attend all those non-disclosure events, and ZOS 2.1, my take on it is it has some tantalizing features in it. Now that the OTE environment is as robust and open as it is. And as ZOS and USS continues to grow and expand, to a guy like me who runs inside of CICS in the open transaction environment, where I have this explosion of features at my disposal, whether they are coming to me through CICS or whether they're coming to us through ZOS, some days I find myself like a kid in a candy store because there are some, we've already talked about the things going on with 5.1, but this question correctly posits that there are some exciting things coming out in ZOS 2 and 2.1. So I just say watch this space. We are involved in that, and we will exploit in every way possible that you would imagine an integration-minded ISV would.
Okay, the next question, is the modern batch support pack only for Java batch processing?
Well, I think the answer to that is no. We rely on the Java technology, and this is another great example where being able to reuse other folks' Java technology inside a CICS is paying dividends. We rely on this Java implementation to interface with the WebSphere compute grid style scheduler and to get work fed from that into a CICS region. But once you're dispatched into the CICS region in the JVM server, the great thing about the capabilities of the JVM server is that you can then invoke COBOL PL1 assembler applications through JCICS link on the same thread. So there's no switching, there's no marshalling of, or there's the minimum marshalling of parameters because we're all in the same address space on the same thread. So it's quite, I would envisage a lot of scenarios where we're driving the batch work using some Java-based infrastructure, but the application code is what you might term traditional. I'm not sure I like that word anymore because Java can become traditional as well. But certainly you can drive COBOL PL1 components out of the modern batch infrastructure.
Susan, did I miss any other questions that came in via the chat window? And if not, why don't we go ahead and unmute the phones for questions. Susan, you may be muted because I'm not hearing you respond.
Hello.
Okay, I think the phone's unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was working.
Very good. Ask away. Do we have any questions?
Well, I guess not. So, Farrell, I tell you what, I just wanted to jump in here and say thank you again to Ian for their support of HostBridge. The CICS group does a wonderful job supporting the ISVs up and down the organization, from Danny Mace, the head of the development, down through Ian and Andy and Diane Johnson. I want our customers to know that we really value the support that IBM provides to us as an ISV. And so Ian, as the one on the phone, I'll just say my thank you to you, and please convey them to the rest of your team. It's a great working relationship, and we are looking forward to exploiting 5.1 and everything else that comes after it that you all cook up.
Well, thank you, Russ, but I mean, the truth is CICS wouldn't be what it is without the support of the ISVs like yourselves.
So, Farrell, I tell you what, Susan, why don't we call it a day? Thank you very much to everyone for joining. And again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to give us a call or email. I'm sure Ian and I would love, either of us would love to engage. Farrell, back to you.
Very good. Again, we'll be sending a slide deck out of both presentations to everyone. We did record this, so if you're interested in socializing that to others within your company, please just request back and we'll send the URL and password. And if there's nothing else, thank you for attending. This will include our webcast.